All right, so continuing on, the next thing we come to is the Corinthian order. And you can see that the Corinthian order is the most ornate of the three. The proportions of the column shaft remain pretty much the same as they did with the Ionic order. I recall that I was told that they actually got a little bit more slender, but when I was looking at the drawings and stuff, it did not appear that they were. It looked like they were pretty much the same. How many of you guys have ever heard of Corinth? How many of you have ever opened a Bible? And so one of the books in the Bible is Corinthians, right? First and Second Corinthians. That is what it is referring to, is those people. Okay. Okay. So the Corinthian order is not associated with a distinct temple or plan, but it is defined for a geographic region that is a variant of the Ionic, and that is from Corinth. Okay, here is a drawing that contains the three Greek orders kind of put together. And so you can see how much more sort of chubby and simple and more basic the Doric is than both the Ionic and the Corinthian order. You can start to get an idea how the entablatures for each of these have developed and sort of changed over time. Okay. So later, when we get to Rome, we're going to be talking about two additional Roman orders that will make what is typically called the 5 classical orders of architecture. Okay? And those two additional orders are going to be the Tuscan. Remember I pointed out that purple area that said the Etruscans lived up there in the upper part of Italy? Think Tuscan, Etruscan. Link those together. Okay? And then there is the composite. And the composite is this sort of blending of the Corinthian and the Ionics together. Okay? All right. And now we're going to move on to civic architecture. So,
You want to stop here?
no,
Okay.
I can't. No way.
Oh, you just started. Never mind. I'm just kidding. Okay, I'm sorry.
Frank is here. Please punish him for this.
I was confused.
Discouraging, disrupting us. So one of the things that I want you guys to be aware of, we talked about the fact that Greece was kind of focused on, no, I'm sorry, I misspoke. We talked about that Egypt was sort of like focused on this culture of death, right? And we talked about the Mesopotamians having this broad range from the 3 cultures that were there. Some of them were interested in knowledge, and some of them were interested in cities, and other ones were interested in palaces. Okay? The Greeks were very focused on public architecture, which we're going to call civic architecture. And so they developed a series of types that were sort of unique to them, that focused on different functions of Greek civic life. Okay? So one of those places is the agora. The agora is kind of this town center. Think of it as like the city center, right? It's where back in the day they would have the market. It's where if somebody wanted to protest against something, or somebody wanted to speak, or somebody wanted to teach, they might do it in this agora. Okay? It was composed of a series of different public structures. One of those structures was the stoa. All right, and so the stoa was, and we'll show you some images of it, of one. The stoa was essentially a colonnaded front covered by a roof with a space that was a public walkway behind the columns, and then there were like small rooms beyond that. They were often used in form of shops. Stoas were also used for, believe it or not, gymnasium-type exercises, since they were covered. Okay. The tholos was a walled circle used as a gathering area for members of a presiding council, a governmental council, right? And you think of it like a little theater, because the theater is one of the civic types that Greece is sort of known for. And finally, I'm going to have a hell of a time pronouncing this, the Bulyterion. which was the council's meeting hall. It was a squared or rectangular space with sort of steep steps coming down. So think of it as a square theater with a podium in the center and an area to speak in from the center. Okay? So here is kind of an image of the agora. All right, in ancient Greece, you can see that it was, you know, it was a developed civic space. Okay, this could easily be something that you would see later in Rome. You see up at the top of the hill the Acropolis. The Acropolis is where the sort of religious portion of the city occurred. All right, or not occurred, was located. Another view of the Agora of Athens with the Acropolis at the top and the pathway leading up to it. And here in this next thing, we have two different things, and we want to make sure that we kind of clarify them. One of them is a reconstruction of a stoa. Let me back up also for a second. You see this back building way back here? This one? Right, that's one of the stoas, and then there are other stoas at this end of the agora. Okay, but we have two different building types here. We have a stoa, which is this is a reconstruction in Athens. Okay, this has the colonnade, the covered roof area, the open walkway behind it, and then there are the stalls that were behind that. Okay, this is that word that I'm having a hell of a time pronouncing, the Miliuterion. Oh boy. Huh? It's not a theater. This was a meeting place for governmental functions. Okay, you can see that it's relatively tight. It's much more intimate than a theater. I'm about to show you a Greek theater. All right, and you'll be able to see that the Greek theater is substantially larger. Okay, so here's an example of a Greek theater. I think this might be the Greek theater at Delphi, but I'm not positive. And you can see that the intent of this was that it be a substantial gathering, much smaller than that previous governmental sort of theater that we looked at a moment ago. Okay, the theater had a variety of parts. The way that the Greek sort of theater developed was that they didn't stand up on the stage. They stood in this center part that was called an orchestra. Now we think of orchestra as being music, but orchestra to them was where the performance took place. There was the proscenium, which was this background with some ramps, and that's where the sort of setting, the background setting would be sort of contained. And then there was this very large amount of seating in the round, okay? One of the things that I want to point out about Greek theaters is that they were often cut into the land. You'll see later when we get to Rome that Rome started doing that, but then they changed and started to build them freestanding, which required the building of walls. So that's a substantial difference. I believe this is Delphi here, and so you can see the remains of one of those theaters, the orchestra. There, the proscenium is gone, but you can see where it was, and you get an idea of the scale of how big these things were. Okay.
What was that again? That place?
I think it's Delphi. It's the theater at Delphi, but I'm not positive. Another view of a smaller theater. This one you can start to see a portion of the proscenium that's there. The Greeks built theaters everywhere that they went, everywhere that they established a colony. That was one of the civic structures that they felt was essential to their culture. All right. Taking a quick look at Greek temple complexes. This is we're specifically going to be looking at the Acropolis, which is probably the most important of the Greek complexes. All right. We've kind of already looked at this slide. Actually, I need to get rid of it, so I apologize that it's there. I copied that slide further forward when we compared the Greek temple to the Egyptian temple. All right. But taking a look at the Acropolis of Athens, many of you may have seen like pictures of, you know, the Parthenon sitting up on top of this hill, right? This is the place where it's located, all right? So one of the key things that you guys gotta sort of understand about this particular sort of place is that it was considered holy ground, and it evolved over hundreds of years. What we see as the current buildings on the Parthenon were probably the 5th, 6th, 7th iteration of things that might have occurred up there. I believe that this was actually part of an earlier culture. So you can see in the upper corner where it shows the Mycenaean fortifications. Okay, so remember earlier I was talking to you guys about how there wasn't like this perfect order to the sort of positioning of the Greek buildings, right? Like when you look at Egypt, man, it's like that pylon was there, and then there was a room behind it, and a room behind it, and there were all these like more rigid sort of axial arrangements. This again starts to show this idea that the Greeks wanted these temples to be seen from 3 dimensions, not just approached ceremoniously. Okay, so some of the pieces that I want you guys to be aware of here are the propylaea, which is this upper portion. The propylaea functioned as a gateway to the holy areas of the Acropolis. Okay, another component that I want you to be aware of is this building called the Erechtheum. It has a really important sort of unique porch on it called the Caryatid porch. All right, and then finally the Parthenon, which is this huge building. There's a video, and I'm probably going to ask you guys to watch a piece of it about the building of the Parthenon. Okay, and the man that built it, and how expensive the Parthenon was to build. How long it took. It took 15 years, I believe, or longer to build. So, and what they said was that the cost, when translated to current times, is in the billions of dollars, if we compared it to our currency. So it was a heck of an undertaking. The guy that was responsible for sort of fostering it through died 2 years after it was completed. So, all right, here's a sort of 3-dimensional view of the Acropolis. Okay. You can see the Erechtheum down over in this corner. You can see the walled sort of enclosure of it, the propylaea and the Parthenon. So looking at the propylaea itself, oops, I went the wrong way, didn't I? How much time do I got left, guys?
30 seconds.
Oh, jeez. You're supposed to give me a little more heads up than that, aren't you?
That's it.
Oh.
Yeah.